Hello, you're watching Headlines. I'm Anastasia Lavrina. Today's Embraer 190 aircraft operated by Azerbaijan Airlines flight on the Baku-Grozny road made an emergency landing approximately 3 kilometers near the city of Aktau, Kazakhstan. The plane, which was en route from Baku, Azerbaijan to Grozny, Russia, was carrying 62 passengers and 5 crew members. What could have caused a disaster of such magnitude and how the heroism of the pilots could have prevented a more tragic outcome? Joining me now is Konstantin Krivolap, military and aviation expert. Konstantin, hello and welcome to our program.
Thank you for the invitation.
I would like to start our conversation with a question about the main technical characteristics of the Embraer 190. What is the reliability of this aircraft?
This aircraft, manufactured by the Brazilian aviation company, is globally renowned as one of the leaders in aircraft production. The plane has been in operation on airline routes since around 2004. Over this time, it has established itself as a good, reliable aircraft, meeting all the standards of modern aviation engineering. I haven't identified any recurring issues or serial incidents that could negatively define it. I have no complaints about this plane.
Происшествия, которые бы характеризовали его как-то негативно. У меня по самолету никаких замечаний нет.
Well, a preliminary report suggests that the incident was caused by a bird strike when the aircraft collided with a flock of birds. What do you think about this?
Там стоят очень надежные двигатели General Electric.
These planes are equipped with very reliable General Electric engines. Both the engines and the aircraft undergo strict certification procedures in accordance with ICAO standards, the international organization dedicated exclusively to aviation safety. This is their sole area of focus. They develop standards and regulations, which countries then implement. Now, to obtain certification under ICAO standards, an aircraft and its engines must pass what are known as bird strike tests. For example, I've personally conducted bird strike tests on the Ruslan aircraft. We tested the cockpit to determine whether it could withstand the impact of a duck weighing 1.8 kilograms or goose, which are quite large birds, and whether they could break or shatter the cockpit windows. Similar tests are conducted on engines for bird resistance. On special test benches, the carcasses of ducks or other birds are launched into the engines. The process essentially resembles a meat grinder. Thus, attributing engine failure to a bird strike is difficult for me to accept. As someone familiar with how these tests are conducted and the types of birds involved that could theoretically shut down a General Electric engine, I simply cannot imagine it. Therefore, I would avoid speculating about the potential causes of the accident until we have more objective findings from an official investigation.
In the footage, it's visible that in the final moments of the crash, the aircraft was managed to level out. What role did this play? How closely did the landing adhere to protocol?
It seemed to me that the glide descent was not entirely controlled. That is to say, there was no distinct planning process visible. Perhaps this was due to the site they spotted for landing. They likely decided to aim for it at a higher speed and with a steeper glide path than what would typically be required for this type of aircraft. From what I could see, there was no fire, nor any significant visible destruction. Every aircraft, whether passenger, transport, or military, has what is known as an aerodynamic quality rating. This rating essentially determines how far a plane can glide horizontally, while losing 1 kilometer of altitude. If the aerodynamic quality rating is 13 or 15, it means the aircraft will glide 13 or 15 kilometers horizontally for every kilometer of altitude lost. Thus, it's important to understand at what altitude the incident occurred, the size of the bird flock, and at what altitude the birds were encountered. Based on this, the plane should have glided for some time, even with engine failure, assuming there were no other structural issues. My impression is that the pilots did try to land the plane. If I understand correctly, there was an area, possibly an airstrip, where they attempted to land. However, they didn't quite align with the runway and ended up off course. These matters will be discussed with air traffic controllers and outlined in the emergency reports. All of this is dictated by ICAO protocols and regulations. A commission will need to be established now. This commission must be set up by representatives of the country where the crash occurred. If the crash happened in Kazakhstan, for instance, it would involve the regulatory body of Kazakhstan following ICAO standards. They are required to notify the country of the aircraft's registration, the airline operating it, the aircraft's manufacturer, and the country of origin. This process is strictly outlined. The protocols specify what must be included in reports, how the Commission's work is organized, how experts are invited, decisions made, and the Commission's chair appointed. Everything is clearly defined under ICAO, and national agencies implement these standards in their regulatory frameworks.
Konstantin, in your opinion, why did the crew decide to land the aircraft on land rather than water? What technical factors could have influenced this decision?
This decision would have been made by the pilots, whether to land on land or water. Much depends on factors such as how much fuel remained, the state of the waves at sea, and wind conditions over the water. If there were no significant waves, a water landing could have been softer. Conversely, landing on land entails risks such as breaking the landing gear or attempting a belly landing, which could result in a fire and potentially more casualties. These are decisions pilots must make. Additionally, they would have been communicating with air traffic controllers, who would have provided specific instructions. Access to this information is essential to make an accurate assessment of what actually occurred.
Well, during the crash, the aircraft almost split into two parts. In your opinion, why were the surviving passengers located in the tail section of the aircraft? What are the statistical survival changes for passengers in the tail section during such accidents?
I
wouldn't say it's related to the location itself, but rather to where the initial structural failures occur. Aircraft are designed under the principle of uniform strength, meaning certain components have additional strength reserves. But overall, the airframe must have consistent structural integrity. That said, failures can still occur in specific areas, such as the wing box or center fuselage. These areas might not detach as favorably as the forward or rear sections. Thus, it's influenced by numerous factors. Suggesting that the tail section is inherently safer could lead to misconceptions, where everyone might start insisting on sitting there. This isn't the case. For example, older aircraft like the Antonov and 24 had specific recommendations to sit in the tail section, because if the landing gear collapsed, the cockpit would crumple more than the tail. But these aircraft are 60 to 70 years old and barely in operation anymore. Modern planes with 2 or 4 engines and wings are designed with uniform structural strength, making it impossible to definitively state where passengers are safest.
Unfortunately, many people have died, but fortunately, they are survivors. Given the scale of the tragedy, could there have been more fatalities, or on the contrary, could the numbers of victims have been reduced?
When I first saw the footage this morning, I honestly crossed myself and thought everyone had died. Given the speed of descent, the impact with the ground, and the immediate fire, I assumed no one could have survived. Thank God, not everyone perished.
And two more brief questions. Have you encountered similar tragic incidents involving the Embraer 190 before? How much time might be needed to decode the black boxes?
Я, честно говоря, не отслеживал так катастрофы с Эмбраером именно.
I haven't closely followed incidents involving the Embraer 190, as there hasn't been a need for me to do so. However, from what I've reviewed this morning, I found no negative remarks regarding its reliability or build quality. The reviews are positive, and it's considered a well-made aircraft. Operational shortcomings might occur due to maintenance issues, but not due to the plane's design. Overall, it's challenging for me to speculate. Generally, aviation statistics indicate that pilot error accounts for 50% of all accidents, while technical failures make up just 22%. Of those, 30% are engine failures, and 25% are landing gear malfunctions. In this case, there appears to have been an issue with the engine. Speculating that it was engine surging or another malfunction is difficult, given that General Electric engines are among the best in the world. These engines undergo regular maintenance and servicing. If you don't adhere to maintenance schedules, inspections, or software updates, you simply won't be able to start them. These are excellent engines, making it hard to assume engine failure. I'd refrain from speculation until the authorities have analyzed the black boxes, air traffic communications, the altitude of the incident, and the presence of the bird flock.
Konstantin, thank you so much for joining our discussion today. A national day of mourning has been declared in Azerbaijan for December 26 over the tragic crash of the Embraer 190 passenger aircraft. We'll continue to provide the latest information on the progress of the investigation. Stay with us and see you in the next edition.